From the moment I took my first breath, my mother assigned me a role. I was the dumb one. She didn't just say it. She enforced it. She drugged me to keep me confused, isolated me to keep me ignorant, and when I defied her by escaping to college, she tracked me down. With my brother holding me down and a syringe in her hand, she smiled and told me she was going to permanently scoop the problem out of my brain. In the universe my mother constructed, we were not children. We were archetypes, living, breathing embodiments of a single trait she had bestowed upon us in the sterile, fluorescent light of the delivery room. Our identities were not ours to discover. They were assigned, immutable, and etched into the very fabric of our existence before we even had names. My mother, a woman who saw the world as a meticulously ordered system of her own design, called it maintaining the family ecosystem. It was a phrase she used with the calm, detached authority of a scientist, as if our lives were a delicate terrarium and our spirits were mere components to be managed. There were 4 of us. Natalie, the firstborn, emerged into the world quiet and watchful, her infant eyes seeming to absorb everything. My mother, in that moment, declared her the smart one. Then came Eden, whose features, even when puckered and red from birth, possessed a fragile, porcelain delicacy. She was instantly christened the pretty one. Miles was next, a robust baby whose cries echoed through the hospital wing with a startling force that my mother interpreted as strength. He became the strong one. And then there was me, Leia. I was the last, the smallest, an afterthought who struggled for every breath in my first few minutes of life. My weakness, my fight for survival, was not seen as resilience. In my mother's rigid taxonomy, it was a deficiency. I was pronounced the dumb one. This wasn't a nickname or a cruel joke, it was a diagnosis. She had these designations inscribed on our official birth certificates, tucked away in the section for congenital conditions, as if being pretty or dumb was a medical fact as undeniable as a heart defect. My father, a man who still believed children were meant to grow into themselves, couldn't stomach it. When he realized her ecosystem was not a strange phase but a fanatical ideology, he left. He couldn't bear to witness the systematic dismantling of his own children. To my mother, his departure wasn't a tragedy. It was a validation. It proved her system was purer, more efficient, without the chaotic variable of a dissenting opinion. Life inside the ecosystem was a constant, brutal exercise in conformity. We were punished not for being bad, but for being wrong, for daring to exhibit a talent or a trait that belonged to another sibling's domain. When Natalie, the smart one, found herself stumped by a complex calculus problem, my mother would patiently guide her through it. But if I, watching from the doorway, dared to suggest a solution I had secretly worked out, the retribution was swift and severe. My mother would slap the book from my hands, her voice a low hiss, reminding me that dumb children do not possess the capacity for higher mathematics. My punishment was designed to reinforce my designated role. For Eden, the tyranny was aesthetic. When a natural teenage growth spurt made me an inch taller than her, my mother forced me into a perpetual slouch. The dumb one cannot overshadow the pretty one, she would state, pressing her hand firmly between my shoulder blades until my spine began to accommodate the curve. That curve is still there, a permanent, physical reminder of my enforced inferiority. My formal education was a casualty of my intelligence. After I tested above grade level in reading in the 3rd grade, my mother descended upon the school in a state of manufactured panic. She withdrew me immediately, fabricating a story about my severe cognitive disabilities and the school's inability to meet my special needs. The truth was, my ability to learn terrified her. It was a crack in the foundation of her perfect world. Miles, the strong one, bore his burden in silence. He was forbidden from crying, from showing any sign of pain. When he broke his arm falling from a tree, my mother simply reset the bone herself, her face a mask of cold indifference as he bit his lip until it bled. The strong one, she reminded him, her voice devoid of sympathy, does not feel pain. Eden's existence was a constant battle against her own body. The moment she began to develop the soft curves of a young woman, my mother declared war. She was placed on a series of increasingly extreme diets, her meals shrinking to little more than a few lettuce leaves and a sliver of protein. She fainted regularly, her body protesting the starvation, but my mother was unmoved. The pretty one must remain ethereal, she would say, looking at Eden's gaunt frame with an approving eye. As we grew, So did our natural inclinations, and the more we deviated from our assigned paths, the more violent my mother's corrections became. When Eden discovered a love for track and field, her natural athleticism a source of rare joy, my mother began slipping pills into her food that made her hair thin and fall out in clumps. "Pretty girls do not sweat," she declared. "They glow." Miles was her monument to strength. From the age of 6, he was forced into a grueling weightlifting regimen, his small body pushed to its limits day after day. By his late teens, his joints were a wreck of chronic pain and inflammation, a ticking clock that would see him reliant on a cane before he turned 20. Natalie's artistic soul was another threat to the ecosystem. She had a gift for painting, her canvases filled with a vibrant, emotional life that was a stark contrast to our sterile home. When my mother discovered her secret portfolio, she didn't just disapprove. She built a bonfire in the backyard and forced Natalie to watch as years of her work turned to ash and smoke. But my perceived flaw, my intelligence, was the most stubborn. Beauty could be starved, strength could be broken, but a mind was a more difficult thing to destroy. My mother's solution was chemical. She began giving me pills, telling our few remaining relatives that they were for a severe, nonverbal learning disability that I didn't actually have. The pills were sedatives. They wrapped my mind in a thick, persistent fog, leaving me dizzy, confused, and struggling to form a coherent thought. In this prison, we became each other's secret keepers, our acts of rebellion small but profound. Late at night, long after my mother was asleep, Natalie would sneak into my room with her textbooks, whispering lessons on algebra and history by the dim light of a flashlight. She risked a beating if we were caught, but she refused to let my mind atrophy. Eden, in her own quiet act of defiance, would find my pills and, whenever she could, meticulously swap the sedatives with vitamin capsules she had stolen from the pharmacy. Miles, under the guise of chasing me away from his sacred weight set, would secretly coach me through exercises, helping me build a physical strength my mother had forbidden. We developed a secret language of blinks, coughs, and hand signals, a silent conversation happening right under our mother's nose. We were a unit, for prisoners bound together, each carrying their own unique curse while trying to alleviate the suffering of the others. Our first real bid for freedom came on my 15th birthday. Miles had been squirreling away money from odd jobs he did for neighbors, and we had a plan. We were going to run, all 4 of us. But we underestimated the depths of our mother's paranoia. She had installed tracking software on the cheap phones she allowed us to have. She intercepted us at the train station, her face a terrifying mask of calm fury. The punishment that followed was designed to break us. Miles was forced to carry 100-pound bags of feed from the barn to the house, over and over, until his back finally gave out and he collapsed. Natalie was locked in her room with a stack of university-level physics textbooks and ordered to solve every equation, working for 16 hours straight without a break until she passed out from exhaustion. Eden was made to stand before a mirror for 2 days, listing every perceived flaw on her face and body, her own reflection becoming an instrument of torture. My punishment was mental. I was given a stack of notebooks and ordered to write, "I am too stupid to think for myself," 10,000 times. After that, the world we knew shrank to the size of an isolated farmhouse miles from anywhere. My mother told the world we had perished in a tragic fire, a lie that severed our last ties to the outside world and gave her absolute control. 3 years passed in that suffocating silence. Then a lifeline. I discovered the existence of free online courses. While my mother believed I was placidly looking at digital picture books, I was secretly devouring knowledge. My siblings became my co-conspirators, their lives a series of elaborate, staged distractions designed to give me time to learn. Natalie would feign an academic breakdown, a crisis of intellect that required our mother's full, undivided attention for hours. Eden would stage a beauty emergency, a broken nail, a perceived blemish, that would send my mother into a frenzy of cosmetic repairs. Miles would pretend to injure himself, a strained muscle or a twisted ankle, requiring our mother's constant, hovering care. They built a shield of chaos around me, and behind it I thrived. I earned my GED online. I used the ancient, dial-up computer at the local library to apply to colleges. The day the acceptance letter from State University arrived at our P.O. box, Miles intercepted it. He found me in the barn, and we all huddled together in the dusty hayloft, tears of joy and terror streaming down our faces as I held the crisp, official paper in my hands. It was real. It was a key. The escape was planned with military precision. On the chosen night, Natalie orchestrated a spectacular fake seizure, a dramatic performance of her brilliant mind being pushed to its breaking point. Simultaneously, Eden smashed a vanity mirror and began a hysterical tirade about destroying her own face, the one thing our mother valued. In the ensuing pandemonium, Miles bundled me into the back of his battered pickup truck and drove. He drove all night, the darkness of the country roads a stark contrast to the bright, terrifying hope that was blooming in my chest. For one glorious, unbelievable week, I was a normal person. I lived in a college dorm. I went to lectures and took notes. I chose my own clothes, spoke my mind in class discussions, and made friends who knew me only as Leia, a slightly shy but intelligent freshman. I was just Leia. And then the phone rang. It was her. "Did you truly believe I wouldn't find you?" Her voice was eerily calm, the lack of anger more terrifying than any scream. "The school contacted me regarding your medical records. I've already processed your withdrawal. Miles is on his way to bring you home." A cold dread washed over me. I spun around, and there he was, standing in my open doorway, his face a portrait of guilt and despair. Behind him, silhouetted against the hallway light, was my mother. She was holding a black medical bag. "I'm so sorry," Miles whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears. "She threatened to blind Eden. She said she'd break both of Natalie's hands." My mother stepped into the room, her smile a chilling, unnatural curve. She unzipped the bag and began preparing a syringe, the click of the vial echoing in the sudden silence of the room. "You've disrupted the entire ecosystem by attempting to be intelligent," she said, her voice conversational as she flicked the side of the syringe. "We simply need to correct this overactivity in your brain. Permanently." She mentioned a name, a Dr. Benson, who was apparently waiting for us back at the farmhouse. "He performs special lobotomies," she explained cheerfully. "Targeted procedures to remove specific, undesirable cognitive functions." Miles seized my arms, his grip like iron, pinning them behind my back. My mother advanced, the needle glinting. Her final words, delivered with a soft, maternal cadence, will haunt me for the rest of my life. "Don't you worry, sweetie. Once we're done scooping out the problem areas, you won't even remember wanting to be anything other than what you are, the dumb one." The needle pricked my skin. I watched the clear liquid in the chamber, my mind screaming, my body frozen. Suddenly, a thunderous banging erupted at my dorm room door, so violent it seemed to shake the entire building. My mother recoiled, snatching the needle back and hastily shoving it into her medical bag just as the door burst open. A campus security officer, her name tag reading Kia Nash, rushed into the room, her hand already on her radio, her eyes taking in the bizarre, frozen tableau. Miles still had my arms locked behind me. My mother was frantically zipping her bag shut. Officer Nash moved with decisive speed, stepping between us and physically removing Miles's hands from my arms. She guided me behind her, a shield between me and my family, her presence a sudden, shocking anchor in my world of terror. My body began to shake uncontrollably, my teeth chattering so hard I thought they might crack. My mother, ever the performer, immediately launched into a calm, measured explanation, her voice laced with a doctor's concern. She spoke of my fragile mental health, my history of episodes, my tendency to fabricate elaborate, distressing stories. But Officer Nash's gaze was fixed on the angry red welts on my arms where Miles had gripped me, and then on the medical bag sitting ominously on my desk. I tried to speak, to tell her what was happening, but my voice was a broken, stuttering mess. "Syringe," I finally managed to choke out. My mother dismissed it as necessary medication for my condition, but Officer Nash wasn't buying it. She called for backup, her body firmly blocking the doorway, a silent sentinel ensuring no one could leave. When 2 more officers arrived, she had them stand with my mother and Miles while she gently led me into the hallway. I told her everything. The needle, the threat of a lobotomy, the word scooping. The story tumbled out in a panicked, disjointed torrent. I watched her expression shift from professional concern to genuine horror. An ambulance was called. The EMTs arrived and meticulously examined the tiny red puncture mark on my arm. As they loaded me onto a gurney, I saw Officer Nash informing my mother and Miles that they would be required to come to the station for questioning. In the sterile, impersonal environment of the emergency room, a Dr. Leora camera took over. She photographed the injection site and the bruises on my arms, her movements precise and her questions gentle. She ordered a full toxicology screen, and a nurse drew what felt like a gallon of my blood. I told Dr. Camera about the pills, the years of induced fog and confusion, the learning disability that was nothing more than a cruel fiction. Her frown deepened. She ordered more tests, cutting small snippets of my hair to be sealed in evidence bags, samples that could create a timeline of the drugs that had been forced into my system for years. They took urine, saliva, every possible sample that could tell the story my mother had tried so hard to suppress. I spent the night in a hospital bed, a revolving door of technicians and tests. A brain scan looked for any signs of long-term damage from the sedatives. The next morning, a woman from the university named Leandra McGuire arrived. She was a case manager, and she came armed with a thick file and a no-nonsense attitude. She showed me the forged documents my mother had used to withdraw me from school, papers that painted a picture of a profoundly disabled young woman incapable of academic life. "Given that you've been attending classes and participating for a week," Leandra said dryly, "I'd say these are fraudulent." She helped me file a FERPA block, a legal barrier that would slam the door on my mother's access to my school records forever. We spent hours filling out paperwork, initiating a no-contact order that would legally ban my mother from setting foot on campus. It was my first taste of real, institutional protection. A text from Eden confirmed my worst fears. My mother was home, her rage now focused on a new strategy: a legal assault. She was on the phone with lawyers, preparing to file for legal guardianship over me, building a case that I was mentally incompetent, a danger to myself, and in desperate need of her control. The university's legal aid office sent an attorney, Lana Felt. She was young, but her mind was a steel trap. She listened to my entire story, her pen flying across a legal pad, her questions sharp and incisive. "We fight the guardianship with facts," she said, her voice firm. "Your acceptance letter, your GED scores, every text message, every memory of abuse. We document everything." The following day, I gave my official statement to Detective Lucinda Bridges. I recounted the incident in the dorm, and then I went further back, explaining the ecosystem, the birth certificates, the systematic abuse. When I mentioned that my mother had literally written our assigned roles on our birth certificates, Detective Bridges stopped writing. She looked at me for a long moment, then made a note. "I'll subpoena the county records," she said. The next few days were a flurry of evidence gathering. I sat in the hospital's small library, printing out every digital breadcrumb of my secret education, screenshotting years of coded text messages from my siblings. Lana helped me organize it all into a meticulously labeled binder, a testament to my sanity and my mother's cruelty. The financial aid office confirmed my funding was frozen, another tendril of my mother's control. Leandra marched down there with me, armed with a police report and a righteous fury, and filed for a dependency override, a complex process to legally declare me independent from my parents. Then the email started. My mother, blocked from direct contact, began sending long, rambling manifestos to my student email account. They were chilling treatises on the importance of the family ecosystem, philosophical justifications for her abuse. She wrote that my rebellion was causing Natalie's intellect to atrophy, without the contrast of my stupidity. She argued that Eden's beauty was meaningless in a world without a designated ugly person. Lana told me to save every single one. "This," she said, holding up a printout of one of the emails, "is a signed confession of her entire abusive mindset." The blood tests came back. Dr. Camera confirmed the presence of sedatives, consistent with long-term, non-therapeutic use. The hair follicle analysis would tell the full story, a chemical diary written in keratin. That night, Miles called, his voice broken by sobs. My mother was tightening the screws, forcing him to choose: help her get me back, or watch her inflict unimaginable pain on Natalie and Eden. He told me she had hired a private investigator, someone who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. In the background, I could hear her voice, cold and sharp: "The strong one does not cry." The legal battle escalated. Detective Bridges helped us secure a temporary restraining order. In court, my mother was the picture of composure, a concerned parent burdened by a delusional child. But then the judge saw the evidence: the photos of my arms, the unhinged emails, the preliminary medical reports. His expression hardened. The temporary order was granted. My mother, undeterred, began to weaponize our extended family, sending cousins and old friends to contact me, their messages dripping with guilt and accusations. Then came the doxing. A post appeared on an obscure online forum, my name, my photo, and my dorm address, painting me as a dangerously unstable person who had abandoned her disabled siblings. The university's IT department traced the IP address back to a library near the farmhouse. The no trespass order was issued the next day. A few days later, a small package appeared in my campus mailbox. Inside was a thumb drive. A sticky note, in Miles's familiar scrawl, contained a single word: evidence. I plugged it into my laptop. It was the birth certificates. There, in the box for medical conditions, was my mother's elegant cursive. Natalie, smart one, exceptional cognitive function. Eden, pretty one, aesthetic priority. Miles, strong one, physical dominance required. And mine, dumb one, severely limited capacity. It was premeditated, documented, and irrefutable. I ran to Lana's office, the printed papers clutched in my hand. She went pale. "I've been a family law attorney for 20 years, she whispered. "I have never seen anything like this." The guardianship evaluation was my next trial. For 3 hours, I sat with a court-appointed psychologist, answering questions, solving puzzles, and reading passages. I showed her my GED, my college acceptance letter, and finally, the birth certificate. I watched her professional composure crack as she read the words my mother had written. The small victories began to accumulate. The evaluator's report was unequivocal. I was not only competent, but highly intelligent and resilient. The judge denied my mother's guardianship petition. The university, after reviewing the evidence, provisionally re-enrolled me in 2 classes. It was a lifeline to normalcy in a sea of chaos. But my mother's desperation grew with each defeat. She threatened to permanently disfigure Natalie's hands. The threat was credible enough that Lana and Detective Bridges brought in a social worker, Justina Wilkerson, who began covertly working with my siblings, creating escape plans. Eden was the first to break free. After my mother discovered a hidden phone she used to talk to me, Eden knew her time was up. In the middle of my mother's rage-fueled destruction of the phone, Eden grabbed a pre-packed bag and ran. She called me from a women's shelter, her voice a mixture of terror and exhilarating relief. My mother, predictably, reported her as a kidnapped person, another lie that only served to tighten the legal noose around her own neck. The hair analysis results came back, confirming what we already knew. I had been systematically drugged for at least 4 years, the dosage increasing as I got older and my natural intelligence became more difficult to suppress. Then, a week later, my mother made her most brazen move yet. I was walking across campus when I saw her, disguised in a cheap wig and oversized sunglasses, but her purposeful, rigid walk was unmistakable. She was following me. I texted Officer Nash and calmly walked towards the campus security building. Nash intercepted her just outside the library. My mother's arrest for criminal trespass and violating a restraining order was a surreal, cathartic moment. The image of her in handcuffs, her carefully constructed composure finally shattering, felt like the first real sunrise after a lifetime of darkness. The search warrant for the farmhouse was executed the next day. They found everything. Detailed notebooks chronicling her ecosystem management, stockpiles of unlabeled prescription sedatives, 17 GPS tracking devices, and printed emails between her and Dr. Benson discussing cognitive adjustment procedures. The evidence was so overwhelming that she was arrested again, this time on charges of assault, stalking, and child endangerment. Miles, Eden, and Natalie all gave official statements, their voices finally free to speak their truth. The weight of their combined testimony was crushing. The state medical board suspended Dr. Benson's license after 3 other families came forward with similar stories of his unconventional treatments. Faced with an ironclad case, the prosecutor offered my mother a plea deal: plead guilty to assault and stalking, and in return, she would receive probation, mandatory psychiatric treatment, and a 10-year restraining order protecting all 4 of us. We talked it over, a long, tearful conference call between 4 broken but healing siblings. We agreed. Our safety, our future, was more important than vengeance. In the end, my mother took the deal. She stood in court and admitted her guilt, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. I don't know if the therapy will ever change her, if she will ever comprehend the devastation she caused. But it doesn't matter. The ecosystem is broken. My siblings and I began to rebuild. Eden found an apartment, Natalie started painting again in secret, and Miles began physical therapy for his ruined joints. We met for coffee, the 3 sisters sitting together without fear for the first time in our lives. We were all scarred, but we were free. The other day, I was sitting in my English class, the morning sun streaming through the window. The professor asked a question, and without a second thought, I raised my hand. I offered my analysis of the text, my voice clear and confident. The professor smiled. An excellent point, Leia, she said. It was a simple, ordinary moment, the kind of moment millions of students experience every day. But for me, it was everything. I wasn't the dumb one. I was just Leia. And for the first time, that was enough.